Thank you so much for the kind words. It's a great pleasure being here. I always love to come back to Iceland. I came here when I was very young and stayed for a whole month, and I never forgot about Iceland. I'm very happy to be able to talk about how to unlocking the full potentials. I will use that to unlock the full potentials of the biomass. I will use that to open for Nordic opportunities, but more than opportunities, impact. And I will be very ambitious. We are going to be the champions of the bioeconomy and really making an impact and contributing to a more sustainable world. And making a good living doing it, of course. The next part I would like to say, yes, the global needs, and Christine, you did so marvelously really addressed that. I'll add a bit more. Improve mitigating the climate change by improved use, improved resource efficiency. Remember, every time you use the whole cod and not just a fillet, you have less CO2 emissions per ton produced. This is forgotten in all of the calculations when you are mitigating climate change. Everything is calculated in energy. And they forget about that we actually produce more from less. And this, we must insist that it will be on the COP21 calculation that everything we can do in the primary sector and in the processing to get more out of our resource is going to be a way of being visible on delivering for a more sustainable world. Everything we do is just getting to calculated to energy, and that is not sufficient in actually getting a driver here. Substituting for fossil-based materials, we know about that. The important part is also, as I said before, upgrading full value and to all, and that's much more than substituting for fossils. All in this room know it. We know that biomass is much more than not biomass to bioenergy. But remember, we should not just be satisfied with that. We know that each other knows it. You know, the public don't know it. The Ministry of Finance and the Prime Ministers do not know. The agriculture minister, the different minister maybe in the research and education may know it, but the Minister of Finance in the different countries, in the Nordic countries, some of the European, the Dutch were very fast to getting all the way bioeconomy to Minister of Finance. But the opportunity for actually making jobs, for making better use of the resources, for contributing and building the economy is not seen. And we have to really communicate that. And that is by that we are feeding the world and making a good business out of it. 30 to 40% is wasted so far of all produced. Some people say 50. I mean, all what we produce of food. This means that if we can upgrade that, we are ready to feed the 9 billion. You don't have to wait to get higher yield of the cereals only. They cannot lift that. We must make better use of the resources of what we already produce. Very importantly, we have to get more animal feed produced from our crop residues and waste. It takes almost 3/4 of all arable land in the whole world to produce animal feed, grazing and production. Some people do overlook this important figure. If we can produce more from the waste, we are freeing more land for biodiversity, but also for making more food. So much opportunity in the animal feed. And then stopping the loss of the biodiversity. Most people think about losing tigers or orchids or whales and so. But I have to say the biodiversity is also the microbes. All the microbes are the most important in actually making the bioeconomy, opening the structure, make it bioaccessible, so we can actually feed on what only the cows could do before, where they have their own rumen bacteria and fungi. But we will need that. The microbes and diversity is important. Highlights of the Nordic bioeconomy, it's just amazing what we can already do. I put Iceland up front, not just to be polite as being a visitor here, but also because you are the champions in making not just talking, but doing it. Entrepreneurs, you don't find them better in the world. It's amazing what you've done. When we start talking about the blue biorefinery and the potential, you already have the products, yeah? It's amazing. I'm very impressed. It takes too long to go down, but there are highlights all over. Let me just focus on the Norwegian part. The salmon industry, it's fantastic. It is the need, the market opportunity for new animal feed, which is more than just soy, which is not good when you get the herbicide residue in your salmon. It's not good. You better substitute the soy, and they know, and we can do that. But also not just a need, but also a side stream to upgrade. And the Foods of Norway is wonderful in that they are this program combining the blue biorefinery and the green biorefinery in making new algae, new animal feed. I have to say, I know I have to speak fast, but Faroe Islands, it is a fantastic effort you are doing with cultivating the brown algae, the macroalgae. It looks very, very good, the potential's there, and you do much more. Greenland, I'm most impressed with the shrimp shell biorefinery. It's actually the start of a biorefinery, and you may even be able to make even higher value out of the shrimp shell. It's amazing what's going on. I'm very optimistic. And in the Nordic bioeconomy, yes, we can deliver on the whole EU vision. The EU Horizon 2020, a smarter, more sustainable, and more inclusive society. This is what the bioeconomy can do. Smarter, more sustainable, and inclusive. Inclusive society is to create jobs and to make sure that rural and coastal areas are also developed. Attracting people back home and making jobs so you don't even have to leave, making all sorts of, so that you are growing also the countryside. The world needs this. We can set an example, Northern Norway and Iceland and so on, but also in Denmark, we need development on the countryside. But where is the relation to the rest of the world? They have been mentioning here, because it's very good speakers you have invited. But I would like to say that I think it is a kind of a vacuum. We have not made an international strategy for the bioeconomy in Europe. I think we should start focusing our relation to the rest of the world. And I'm especially interested in that we see it as a business, that when we are sharing and being part of research interaction, providing knowledge and technology to the rest of the world, then we will also create friends and contacts to be the preferred partners in business and in trade and in interactions. This is a positive loop. You contribute and you get back from it, get your part of it. The bioeconomy and the UN. Sustainable, the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, already been mentioned by Christine again. And this is an opportunity. Please see that. It's not just an obligation that we know something the world needs, but it's also an opportunity. Just look at Africa. 40% of all children will be in Africa in not so many decades. Melinda and Bill Gates saw it. They're already there with a huge investment into this area. This is where they need the bioeconomy to make a more sustainable development, not just copying what we did. They have the biomass, they can do it. They need alliances with us to do it, and do it fast and efficient and more sustainable. But we can also benefit from it, because small populations in the Nordic countries, and in EU, if they wake up to it. But in the Nordic countries, we can actually contribute and have alliances built, which can be very useful for trade connections, for technology licensing, and so on. A lot of different opportunities. We need to be part of the bigger development, otherwise we are not going to do the best for our own societies as well. And the revolution, the green revolution, we need the second generation here, not the 2G of the green revolution. And that is, most importantly, stronger plants by microbial inoculants. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a new thing which is coming up called the Bioag. Climate change challenged agriculture throughout the world will need a helping hand. Improving by breeding is not sufficient. You cannot make it strong enough. You need the microbes. Instead of breeding in isolation only a rice plant and a wheat and a maize, you need to have them together with a good phosphor-solubilizing fungi, for instance. And the new trend is to use those, so it makes more of the nutrient accessible to the plant and a better water economy. That makes it stronger when you get drought and that's what happens. Irregular rainfall is part of climate change. This is a serious thing, and that's the micro. It's part of bioeconomy. It's not producing big volumes, but it's a small helping hand from the microbes. So biomass is important, but don't forget the microbes. They are the ones who are doing much of the work in the bioeconomy. More food and feed, I think I have already. Creating local jobs also for young people. Also for young people. I mean, here is one of the areas where we can do more to make sure that we have done our very best, that they don't have to fly away or flee from their countries, so they become refugees in Europe because of that there is no jobs and no opportunities back home. This is local development when you are upgrading your biological resources in your country. That is good jobs. That is good jobs to low-skilled and high-skilled. It is very, very good to make this kind of very basic development with a lot of opportunities where you can feel good jobs, you can stay home because you are helping your country and using your brain and your heart. Now I'll go rapidly through some of the opportunities where I think we are really good. The new one I'm working, I have my own research group. I had that through whether I was a research director at Novozymes or whether I was research director for Aalborg University as a whole. And all the things I did, I always had my own research group. And now it's bigger than ever, and it's really, really interesting. One of the things I'm working on is a decentralized small-scale biorefinery. A lot of other people, US, China, Brazil, they have done the big ones. I'm interested in the next part, that's the small ones, the local ones, where higher value products is driving it. And here, the green biomass is one of them, fresh green leaves, grass, clover, and so on. Rather simple processing, a screwdriver, pulp and juice, low investment, mobile, seasonal variations where you can make good. The Dutch people are really very good in this part also. And then comes my own work, and where we are some people who are really focusing on. You can get a high protein-rich, nutrient-dense animal feed out of this green biomass. You can do that so that you can come and substitute for much of the imported soy from South America. That's the precipitation is a simple for the soluble protein. But what we found out is that if you make a slight protease treatment of the pulp, of the fiber pulp left, instead of feeding it as a lump to the cattle, you can get almost twice as much of the protein out. This is the rubisco protein, which is a protein of the chloroplast. That everyone has known that for ages. It's just forgotten. So that's where, not only for feed, but also for food. And the other part is prebiotic feed ingredient from the hemicellulose, maybe also for food. Prebiotic meaning, you better learn the name, the word, because it's important, that it stimulates the healthy part of your gut flora in these poor people who only have one stomach, that men and pigs and chicken and fish and so on. But the cows can do it themselves. Huh? We need the help where we need to stimulate the good flora. And that can be done by this prebiotic, which is a good nutrition for they really love it, the good ones love it, and the bad, the ones which make us sick, are the ones, they don't like this. So it's prebiotic favoring the good gut flora. Minerals back to soil. Let us not forget about the soil. That was one of the points. So yes, the green biorefinery is not just a Nordic bio-European and an option and an opportunity for the entire world. The blue biorefinery for local development is really a fantastic Nordic opportunity. I believe we in the Nordic countries are the champions already. Norway and Iceland are the ones pointing really forward, and we have also in Denmark, Sweden and Finland research in the area of upgrading from the marine area. So side stream valorization, we already heard about that in this wonderful video. I mean, I have to congratulate Sigrun is not here and all the others who benefited or contributed. Fantastic communication. But let us look at more. There are mussels. Mussels is not just the big mussels for consumption, but a lot of mussels grown to make filter feed and use the surplus of nutrient, which pollute a lot of our inner waters, at least in part of Sweden and Norway and especially Denmark. So mussels, seaweeds, invertebrates, sea cucumber and so on, And also invasive species, we want to get rid of some of those. The jellyfish and some of the crabs are invasive species. We can harvest, and then we can combine the feedstock so that we can make year-round operation. If you have only one seasonal feedstock, it's too big investment on your biorefinery plant you need to have, and that's where you can do locally, optimized to your own feedstock available, maybe some of the green terrestrial combine in, and in one, then you are making a good business. And then I think we should try to contribute to the world also the aquaculture. No one talks about how much aquaculture, where you're making, for instance, rainbow trouts and so on, or shrimps and so on land or close to the sea, to the shore. Those are polluting like hell in most parts of the world. And we have to do better, and I think we can set our standards that we can use the filter feeders to use, and we use the CO2 and so on to actually make a combined ecosystem which clean up after the aquaculture instead of polluting. That's possible. Macroalgae, you know it here, is fantastic. Also the products, skincare and cosmetics and wound healing and so on. A lot of components, it's already mentioned. So, and then combining the blue and the green biorefinery. The devil is in the detail. Don't be siloed, don't think one segment at a time, combine them. And that's where we know which animal would need at which different growth stage, which type of amino acid they know. We already know that. So what we are doing is that we say, okay, the algae can have this, and the plant has this, and so on. And then we can combine them and make this multiple component animal feed, which is done already. But they just mix in with all sorts of imported things. We can do it based on the local one. So this is possible and a fantastic opportunity. The protein, the prebiotic, and then let me also say, export potentials in healthy food. Not just feed, healthy food. We have a good brand. A lot of Nordic countries are really, Norway is, exporting fantastic amount. You are exporting high from here. We are Denmark exporting food, but we can ride on the good brand of the Nordic food and healthy food, and really make the next generation where we have lots of combining the different, not the least from the blue biorefinery. Household waste upgrade. Christine also mentioned that. Too little is done that. Just see when you go around in the world, Sao Paulo and so on, landfills, and it's mountains of waste, which is not just getting lost in CO2, it is methane. And methane is much more horrible emission than CO2. So, and we can do that. We have a new, it's called the Renaissance technology, where you can liquefy the organic part, and you can make organic acids, material, fertilizer, a lot of. And eventually, we get good enough that we can separate the household waste from where we grow the yeast, from the nutrient without getting polluted from the waste. And then we can harvest the animal feed, because yeast cream is the favorite of pigs. The pigs love yeast cream, and I know it because we did it for decades when I was still at Novo Nordisk, where I also worked before demerged for Novozymes, that we are actually, all of the yeast which went into producing half of the diabetics' need for insulin is produced in baker's yeast, and all that biomass left was fed into the pigs, and they didn't need so much of the antibiotics. They grew like, at least a lot of smiles on the farmer faces, and they're really, really, so we know it's not just future, we know it's a good nutrition, and it's one of I get really many opportunities to talk, for instance, in China, and this is what they focus on. Not just biofuel from biomass, but if you can make animal feed, and if you can make more protein, the single-cell protein. So people start talking about insects. Please, insect is good, but fungi are much more efficient. And they are similar in that they can make more protein. We can do both. Insect can be a delicacy, but the fungal protein can really deliver in an ingredient which is easy to introduce and mix into a normal food production process. New Nordic opportunity. Everyone is talking about omega-3, how important it is for life. It is some people say it's not the protein which are selecting and making the rich the real good nourishment, and the poor less nourishment. Omega-3 access is one, and the lipids is one of the big dividers in good nutrition or not. And Frostochytrum, a fantastic organism. It's a microbe. We ought to be able to do it. It's one of my favorite. I'm one of the few experts in zoosporic fungi and fungal-like organism. And here, it has been tried, but there is patents out there. But too short shelf life, it kind of gets spoils on the shelf, and it starts smelly and off taste in the production process. I think this can be solved, and then we could make an efficient omega-3 and really a very interesting food ingredient. Greenland, my heart, not just only Iceland and Faroe Island. I think Greenland, fantastic place. I have been 1 month at the disco at the biological station, Arctic station, fantastic place. One of the ideas, well, my good colleague from University of Copenhagen, Minik Rosing, said there is a glacial rock dust, the natural are at the bottom where the glacier is working on the cliff. That's where you get active geology. Active geology is what you need if you have a poor soil, where all of the nutrient is so heavily bound that there's no accessibility from the plant. And that's what he could. I don't know. I know it has been proposed earlier, but I don't see anything. And I think it can be done without harming nature and could be a good income. And I can see the bucket I'm showing is from an American production, and they said it in 1 kilo buckets for a hell of a high price. So there might be an opportunity there where you can help the world. Change in agricultural practice. Denmark. I have 3 more minutes. I'm running out of time, but I'll just say in short. Cereal is only using photosynthesis on the hectares up to third week of July. Rest of July, August, September, October, sunlight is not used in the Danish agriculture. That's not clever when we don't have more sunlight. If we make perennial grass, we can use twice as much. We can harvest twice as much biomass for the biorefinery, producing more feed per hectare, plus the food and the other product, the prebiotics and so on. And this is not over-polluting, it's the other way around. By using the grass instead of the cereal, you have a much better root system, so it absorbs twice as, making only half the runoff of environmental polluting and surplus nutrient. ×4 improved environmental profile per ton produced. This is an opportunity. We have recommendation from the Danish Bioeconomy panel. It is the environment, food and agriculture ministry who will go to the homepage and look at it. This is how we chose in Denmark to have a panel with a very wide selection of stakeholders around the table, and just find out what do we want to favor and where do we want to take action at the yellow bio, the green, the blue, and household waste biorefineries, and they're concrete. Not just talking about a strategy, but actually recommending what needs to be done. Significant climate change mitigation. I talked to you about this by the grass opportunity, the extra sustainable 10 million, plus 10 million ton in Denmark. They have now, it's not, I think it's published this week. They have tried to calculate, we need to do it in energy, that's the only international standards right now. But if we calculate what we can use those extra biomass sustainably used in Denmark, we will contribute between 40 and 21% of the total emission. We will cut down the Danish total CO2 emission with 14 to 21%. This is not minor thing. I think this is the kind of fact which make our prime ministers and our minister of finance to start listening, and not just the sectorial ministries. There are drivers and obstacles, and there are a lot. You can read it when you can see if you want to look up. We can do so much more. Drivers is the one driving the market. Don't come and ask for subsidies all the time. We want in policy clear directions, and different incentive structures and so on, which are creating the market, then we'll provide the product. That is a sustainable way of doing it. The blend-in directive is one way. We can do that for more, for instance, for the proteins. Regulatory, we really need to do something. There are a lot of regulatory obstacles in EU for the bio-based products. So, Nordic opportunities, we can building the markets together. We have bigger home market. If the Nordic countries will be our home market, then we can take the rest of the world. We can do together to go for the bio-based industries calls, which is 3.7 billion euro overall in that program. We can collaborate to do more and contribute to Africa and also win from it and gain from it ourselves. We can collaborate with the Eastern Europe and the Baltics and Nordic countries. Have you heard that the new already decided biorefineries to be established in Europe? The 5 next to be established will be in the Nordic countries and in the East Europe. Let us go and make good, there are opportunities for in that being done, that we can make upscale facilities and try more of our interesting ideas. So we can do much more, and then we should together impact EU to skill and competence. We can provide skills and competence, and the market driver incentives installed and regulatory EU impacted to remove the EU. So with this, my last slide. Nordic countries to be leading in bioeconomy. Let us put the bar so high, because this is a way where we can contribute to the world and we can benefit from it ourselves. For a more sustainable world and for social and economical benefits in our own countries. All the way out to coastal and rural development. That is what it, jobs, technology and export, new biological solution, and rural and coastal development. I have chosen to put 2 pictures in the last slide. It is a baker's yeast representing the microbes. It's not just a biomass. We build on the microbes in successful implementation of the potentials of the bioeconomy. And then the figures on top is a kind of saying it's a triple bottom line. It is economy, and it's a social and environmental part. All 3, not just one. We need to be successful on all 3 in order to make a sustainable development. And the bioeconomy is the very best place where we are actually able to do that. So, strategic thinking, sense of urgency, and then let us go through and reach more than just the already convinced as in the room. We need to go to understand and communicate to the public, and communicate also to all the way up to Minister of Finance and the head of the Commission and our Prime Ministers in Nordic Council of Ministers should be one of the ways to go. I hope they really see the opportunity. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Lene. Now, I bet there are quite a few questions. I remind you again that you can raise your hand. Toll-free will bring you the microphone. We will start maybe with a couple from Twitter. One that I have sensed very widely in all this discussion about the bioeconomy and just environmental issues. A simple question, so is the bioeconomy, is it vegetarian? Is that the future?
It takes more than technology and headlines to change culture. So I think we'll take it step by step. I think it's clever to start cutting down in meat, so you don't need a whole beef. You can share it with your lover, and then you have half a beef. But then we also have to invest in these feed production. So much of the problem in it's not just a CO2 emission, but it occupies 3/4 of all the land we have to produce. So to use the crop residues to make feed without hiring our CO2 emission, because they're already paid for what we already produced. So make it trendy to cut down and use the protein from fungi and from insects and so on. So little by little, it takes more to change than just a headline.
But that's your vision. That's how you see it.
No, I'm here. I want it to be not just a vision, but actually see how it can be reached. Mm-hmm. And my vision is sustainability. And if we keep on eating so much meat as we do, and all the middle class, which will come into purchase value, they will actually be, then we cannot, the world is going to break. So we don't, maybe not have to be vegetarian. Look at our teeth. you can see the teeth, that we are made to have different sorts of not just vegetarian, but also meat. So it's not that was what we were made for, but we have come into a practice of eating much too much meat. So let us keep diversity also in the menu, but less meat and more from less from animal and more from the plant origin.
Thank you.
Let's take another question from Twitter. It's quite broad. How can we stay on the course of bioeconomy? How can we embrace newcomers and support those who are leading the way? How can we encourage that we will be doing this on and on?
I really think we need the politician to wake up and make a clear, open, quite important, really sending signals with clear incentive structures, clear goals that they want to replace so and so much. They want to make directives that you at least have to reuse so and so much of your residues and so on. This is a necessity. And why is it so important with the clear political signals? It is because if we don't manage that, the investors will not trust that they can put their capital into the area of bioeconomy. So we have the talent, the ideas, the need is there. We need to create the market in order to build what all these entrepreneurs and new ideas. In order to build that, we need more investment, and that in order for them to feel that it is a secure way of investing our pension money and so on, then we need more clear signals that this is from EU, from our nation, from Nordic Council of Ministers. Clear signals, good investing climate, and then good use. And then I think the youth will also find it interesting to be part of this sustainable and booming business.
Right, exactly. That's you kind of answered the question of Sveinn Margeirsson, which was how to attract further investment in bioeconomy. You may want to elaborate a little bit on that.
I think we should be better in remember that we also talk to investors. We should respect it's not their métier. It's not enough to have a good idea and that it's sustainable and it's unique and there is a technology and patent intellectual property possibility and all that. You also have to speak to that the investors can really see that this is something needed, there will be a market for it, and that we can rely on that it was not just hot air and would only be a fashion for 1 year. So, really have to take respect that they are part of making us succeed, that investors and capital is part of the jigsaw. We don't do without them.
I really admire your speed and ability to communicate so much information in a very short time. This reminds me of a seminar in graduate school, and I mean that in the best possible way. Thank you. My question is about school, and I've asked this before for previous speakers today. To realize your vision of the sustainable world, everything you've described, including blue and green biorefineries, how do we have to change education to make it happen?
I think one of the answers before was that you have to present real life into the education system, and that's part of it. So if we have teachers who understand what the bioeconomy can mean for the world and use real example to illustrate it, I think people will listen, the students, the children. But we have also to realize that biology is complex. And I have been, as research director from the university, I was communicating on physics and chemistry and materials and windmills and so on. And that's easy. People immediately associate to understanding windmills. It makes sense. But bio, then they kind of, what is this really? and this about that lignocellulosic biomass, already by saying lignocellulosic, you lost. And then you say microbes, and then half of the people you talk to, they believe that you get sick from them, and the other half don't really understand what I talk about. So, biology is different. It's difficult to communicate. So I think we have to start in first grade or kindergarten to come out and look at the flowers, to be impressed of and astonished of nature's beauty, to really make small experiments. You can even make an experiment with an enzyme, which is very easy to see that suddenly you have, instead of have a marmalade which was so thin that it ran out off from your bread, it suddenly, the molecules find each other, and then suddenly you can eat it without getting it all over. I mean, there are ways of doing that. But then we must call and have ways of bringing people into the expertise, with real expertise from the real world out there, into the classrooms, because much of the tradition in much of our countries is that the ones who are teachers have gone into school all their life. After they are finished at the college or university, they go back to school again. And very few of them have an engineering opportunity or have been out to run their own business or so on. So I think actually if I was a teacher out there and I'd gone to school all my life and realized that the real world has some experience to tell me here, I would every third hour I would call in someone from real life. He won't get not get any money for it. I'll just call him to my class. And because he will love to share it with the youngsters. Call on us from the universities, from all the ones, from the businesses. They can put it on their credentials when they go to the Lions Club or whatever to say, no, I was called upon, and you know. I can see, have been for many, many years part of the biggest science park, the board of the biggest science park in Denmark called Experimentarium. And I have never been in a league of that. I mean, that is the highest, the biggest names in Denmark who have that, because it's kind of philanthropy, that you're also doing something for the good of the future generation and science and technology. So call on us. That we can change in 2-3 months, 1 semester, then we can start changing. And that instead of it takes you 10 years to change your education and get new students in. So yes, that's my immediate cure.
Thank you. We have a question there to the right.
Thank you for your fabulously enthusiastic presentation. I was wondering why you didn't mention learning from the practitioners, because what you actually were talking about was what we can learn from ecosystems, and the practitioners that use agroecology and aquaponics in their production systems. I think we need to get out of our ivory towers and learn from people who actually figured how things work.
Yeah. You're right, I didn't do enough about that. The few places I touched was, for instance, the green biorefinery. You need to understand the current farming practice in order to suggest a change to a new. And that's where the practitioner really are. There are several places when you are understanding people's life and your diet. If you want to change that, you also have to understand it. So practitioner is the farmers. Practitioner is also the people who are in the whole industries with classical chemical-based areas. But it's also that we need to wherever we are, it's not just a practitioner, but it's the different auxiliary skills which are needed. I mean, we need to call upon the ICT. We need to call upon the people understanding humanities, the social scientists, the economists, and so on. So it's so many different, and the teachers, and yes, we have to spread the good word, and we have so many good stories. Let's start telling them, as the movie, the video did so beautifully.
One question there in the center.
Thanks for a very interesting and good presentation. You mentioned or talked about grasses changing from cereal production to grasses. Could you tell us a bit more about that exciting project? We Nordic countries are grasslands.
Yeah. I think it has most message to a country like Denmark and part of Sweden, where you have so close to the north borderline for growing cereals, that it is not we have tried to optimize, and we've been very good, but we can look at the sun and see we don't utilize the sun in photosynthesis good enough. But all the places with the grassland, I think I don't want to preach for you because you're the experts. I'm not the experts in grassland. I don't know how much and how often you could actually cut the grass. I want to listen to the practitioner and understand it before I preach about what you can use it for. But if you look at what the green biorefinery I'm proposing, is that we have now shown that there's so much protein in the grass and in the clover, where you can cut it and it still just regrow even more vigorously, and that you can get animal feed and food protein and prebiotic high-priced products out of it, with rather simple and so high-value products that you can actually make small investments, rather small investments, and even mobile biorefinery units. So I'm going to talk tomorrow at the Circumpolar Arctic Agriculture discussion. And there I will be mentioning some of the same part about using the microbe to strengthen the plants under such challenge condition as the Arctic is, but also about what can you actually use your waste, but also maybe the type of biomass you have. But again, with the being humble in that they are more experts than I am, I love the Arctic, but I'm not an Arctic farmer, and that's another struggle. But I hope it could be, we will publish all what we have done on it, and the BioValue project in Denmark is the largest investment, and this is one of our key focus areas.
Thank you. Now it's noon, but we're going to take one last question, and it would be nice if you would introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Grímur Valdimarsson from the Ministry of Industries and Innovation.
Very good.
Thank you for a very inspiring lecture. I completely agree with you about the size of the food industries in the north, make us very suitable for this kind of programs. My question to you is this one. When I was studying microbes in the 70s, we were going to make all human food from only 3 to 4% of oil by cultivating a microorganism, a yeast called Candida utilis, I believe.
Yeah, I know.
And we had already built in 73, 74, some 100 factories around the world. Then we had a bacterium feeding on gas.
Yes.
So there were huge programs, but after the oil crisis, this stopped. Mm-hmm. And why did we cease that development? And now this is being taken up again with biorefineries, or whatever we call them.
You are right. Single-cell protein is not a new invention. And you are perfectly right. You have a very good memory of what you were taught in the 1970s. That's impressive. And why didn't it take on? My own interpretation is that some more development in making it to a product which is going directly into human food and animal feed. But another part is the silos. It wasn't on the priority list of the people running the natural gas and crude oil exploitation. And the same in Norway. I have many times in my advisory roles also for Norway had the opportunity to say, your offshore experience can be used to be a stepping stone for more marine bioeconomy. And it's just like I'm speaking to another world. It's the one focused on making more oil and natural gas, and they don't see our business as interesting or not part of them. And it is, big industries, let me not mention names, and others have also had, we don't want to make investments into a branch where we are defocusing on our major business. Being dependent on something else we don't really know. And that's where, let me just finish with this one, the biggest biorefinery in Europe, that is Arla. The feedstock is milk. The only reason why they have a good economy is because of the income they get from the side products. And when they only use all the side streams for something, they didn't get much out of it. Then they had to take serious understanding the business area of the side stream, of the products coming from the side stream. And this is what is needed for an established oil and natural gas industry. If something should come on top of them, it's not just one which go by itself. It is also that you have to take interest in who are the customers, how would they be delivered, how do we build up a value chain, and so on. And that never happened in the oil industry or natural gas. But let us tell the world about it. Let us tell about that this is an opportunity to feed the 9 billion. And this is a fantastic opportunity. And not just on the oil and gas, but on so many other resources. Everything you can use to grow a microbe has potentials.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lange.